So, remember how last week I said I just needed an episode of Doctor Who where the Doctor and Ruby just solve some weird murder mystery together and just have fun and it's not really a big deal and didn't have to fit into some overall arching arc and was just a frivolous, fun, whatever episode? Well, thank you, Russell T. Davies, for listening. Hello, interwebs, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to my review of the latest episode of Doctor Who in its latest series, because I'm not going to figure out the numbering. This episode titled Rogue, the 6th episode of this season, and the last one that we get as a standalone episode before the season's two-parter, so very excited, and also kind of sad for that. This season went by way too quickly, because it's only 8 episodes. But on that note, actually, like I joked about just a second ago, this was exactly what I needed at this point in the season. Honestly, I would have rather this episode even come a few episodes earlier, like before or even in between the last two that we got, which were more like Doctor Light or Doctor Adjacent style stories, despite them being fantastic, because this episode was just that frivolous, fun episode that I had been feeling I'd been missing. All of the episodes this season have been really, really good. Like, there have certainly been ups and downs and fluctuations, but I think they've all been really solid. But outside of Space Babies, none of them have just felt like a standard Doctor Who episode. And in an era where we've had, like, you know, we have like streaming series, you just don't really get that episodic feeling anymore. And so to get these like big episodes that are like focused on racism or like a big queer metaphor, like 73 Yards and Dot and Bubble, they're great. And I want those episodes. In fact, I wish more science fiction series today would do like big, very like politically charged and just like go for the gut episodes. But I also just miss having fun with the Doctor, and this episode just gave me that. And I just had so much fun with it. It was just a frivolous adventure, but also did have some larger ongoing things that seemed like they're set up for the future, but in a way that didn't feel heavy, but felt like just fun and exciting and gets me excited to see where they may go in the future. All centralized, I think, on a amazing guest appearance by Jonathan Groff. Like, I love Jonathan Groff. I've seen him in a bunch of different things. I think he's like weirdly a standout performance in Hamilton and a bunch of other things. And so he's in one of my favorite Matrix movies. Yes, he's fantastic. He's Agent Smith in Matrix 4, which is a good Matrix movie. Fight me on that. So I was pumped to see them here, and this episode just did not disappoint. And Jonathan Groff's appearance here very much feels like he is Captain Jack 2.0, very much Russell T. Davies pulling from his old bag of tricks from way back in season 1. And considering the stuff going on with John Barrowman, I think it is good to pull a new character rather than a Captain Jack style character, or I should say just bring Captain Jack back, because that would certainly have been its own issues. But what I really like about Jonathan Groff's character here is actually he is distinct from Captain Jack in a few ways, in that he feels much more mature. As both a character that is like a created written character, and also just in his performance of the character as well. You know, Captain Jack, I think, was a very important and actually kind of, for me especially growing up at that age, a kind of revelatory character for like bisexual representation. And I loved Captain Jack for that and his numerous appearances all the way through Torchwood. But, you know, over the years, looking back, you know, there's a lot of criticisms you could level at him, being the sort of, like, you know, promiscuous bisexual character and things like that, and other things as well. Bit of a, you know, can be a bit of a chauvinist at times, especially in his earlier Doctor Who appearances. Things like that. And so, to get a kind of updated version of him with Jonathan Groff here, it was really nice because there was a sense of, like, he's willing to play, willing to have fun, especially once he kind of opened up to the Doctor a little bit more, but also just like wasn't like flirt, like overly promiscuous, but like had a focus on his job. He wasn't like, he just didn't fit into those stereotypes as easily, and I found that performance to be really, really wonderful. And all the scenes between him and Ncuti Gatwa were just so palpable. Like, if you had told me on paper that there would just be a 45-minute episode with all this other stuff going on, and you're going to be invested in this really quick relationship between the Doctor and this random new character we've never seen before, I would have told you that it probably would not work. I would have thought it would have been way too quick, and yet this episode manages to sell me their connection and their chemistry almost instantaneously. Like, the two of them just bounce off of each other. And I think a large part of that is, like, Ncuti Gatsu's just flirty nature. Like, just the flirtation between these two and the looks that they give to each other are just so much fun, especially that one moment where they find the dead body and they both sort of repeat each other's sentences back at each other. It's like, you, no, like, that was, just that chemistry was great. And then the whole sequence when they are going to the, to Jonathan Groff's rogue ship, and they call, like, the TARDIS the shed. It's like, I love the shed. It's great. And then everything just on the ship where, like, the Doctor sort of playing his music was hilarious, and just having a ball with that. You know, the references to Dungeons and Dragons was interesting and all that jazz. I thought that was really flirty and enjoyable. The one thing that did bug me is there's a moment where Jonathan Groff's character Rogue, he doesn't, I don't know why I'm saying his whole, like, name, he doesn't understand cosplay later on in the episode. He's like, what is this ancient Earth custom of cosplay? But he does play Dungeons and Dragons, which just felt weird to me that you would have a Dungeons and Dragons reference for this character, and then he also wouldn't understand cosplay, because those two things are, like, not only very similar in a lot of, like, or at least come from the same tree, I guess, but also are contemporaneous with each other to a degree as well in terms of what they are. So it felt like a weird thing that he wouldn't have known that, especially it set up the Dungeons and Dragons reference, but that's minor. That's me nitpicking a little bit here. Another thing too, speaking on music, as I did a second ago, I loved the anachronistic music that we got here from from the party. This very Bridgerton-esque style, upper class British party. Like, I think we got one song was like, rough guy, make him Mr. Tough Guy. I don't want to say, I don't know the name. I'm the bad guy. Like, that song, I think it's Billie Eilish. I'm not a music person, so the fact that I caught these, give me credit that I caught these. Like, this is a win for me. But I believe that's a Billie Eilish song. There was also, I think, Poker Face, I think, at one point. I might be misremembering that. But certainly there was just some anachronistic music being played here in a classical style, just in the background of certain scenes. I thought that was kind of fun too. I did enjoy that. Other things too, beyond certainly their chemistry, I thought the main mystery of this was fun. Nothing, again, super special. It didn't have this, like, weight of, like, it's a big metaphor about something. No, it's just bird people who wanted to cosplay at a Bridgerton style event and were willing to murder to do it. Like, that's not super complicated, but it's fun enough. And there's a bit of mystery and like playfulness around with that. I loved the villain sort of, like, talking about human bodies as cosplay, like in the first scene where they're like, ooh, you're bad, aren't you? I would love to play you. Or the one saying, like, oh, I picked wrong playing one of the maids. Like, yeah, why would you cosplay one of the maids? That's no fun. That's no fun. There's some classism there. I'm sure there's actually a lot of fun you can get with all the gossip and messing around as one of the maids. So yeah, I did enjoy them. I thought they were, you know, nothing fantastic, nothing to write home about necessarily as a Doctor Who villain. They're not going to be one of the classics, but they were functional and worked well for what this was. I was really, really glad that we, well, let me back up. Ruby's storyline in this episode I thought was fine, where she's, like, with this other girl, and I thought there was some decent humor there. In any other episode, I would have been like, yeah, these are good scenes, I enjoy them, but comparing them to the very much more palpable scenes of the Doctor and Jonathan Groff, they kind of felt like, let me get back to the more fun stuff. I want to see them. So, you know, Ruby kind of got a little bit shafted here, because the scenes are fine, but they just don't stand up next to the other stuff. So I was sort of like, get through Ruby stuff to get to the end here. What I will say, though, kind of twofold, is it is speaking as this is like a fun, frivolous Doctor Who episode, I wish we had gotten more of the Doctor and Ruby together, because even as the past two episodes, they've both been separated. Like, Dot and Bubble, they're technically together, they do have some chemistry on screen, and they are technically in the same room as the racist white supremacist girl was so shocked by, but they were also, like, on two separate screens and mainly talking to another character rather than interacting with each other all that much. And so this is another episode, like the third and the row where we don't get much of these two together. So while I have been wanting that more episodic feel, it's still not getting as much chemistry between these two. And they do have good chemistry, as we saw in the first 2 episodes of the season. But really, these episodes have just been kind of keeping them apart. And I think that's a little bit detrimental, because we get this line here where the doctor says, you know, Ruby, she's my best friend. And I don't, it's not that I don't buy it, it's just that I don't have an emotional charge to as much to that as I would to, say, like David Tennant's doctor, whether it be the 14th or the 10th, and Donna Noble. You know, when he said she's my best friend, I believe that. I believe that wholeheartedly by the time we get to the end of even that series, or even the middle of that series with the two of them. And here, when the doctor says that a Ruby, it's not that I don't buy it. It doesn't hit as hard. And the fact that the end of this episode does rely on the doctor being upset at Ruby's death, supposed death, it's not as strong as it could be. I was just like, I see what you're doing here, but it doesn't work as hard as it probably could have if we had maybe 2 or 3 more episodes of this season where I got to see them hanging out together, or even had come off of another episode where they had spent more time on screen together. But we've spent the last 2 weeks not getting that, and so I just haven't, it didn't work as well for me. That being said, 2 little story beats that I did really like about this is, one, I loved that the Ruby's fake-out death was not used to prolong the season-long story arc, because I thought when Ruby looked like she was getting killed, that the reveal was going to be like, oh, any other human would have been killed, but because she has this weird mystery box with the snow thing going on with her, of course she actually gets to survive it. And I actually just like, no, she survived because of the thing that had been set up earlier, the earrings. So I was glad that this episode kind of stood on its own terms and didn't need to feed into the mystery box stuff. Again, I don't mind mystery box stuff all that much as, like, say, my friend Vera from the Council of Geeks channel does. She very much hates when mystery box storylines get in seasons. I don't mind them as much as long as they don't provide deus ex machinas or distract from the individual episodic storylines. So if you have a mystery box in an episodic show, I think it works just fine as long as it doesn't distract from the story you're telling, or take over the story you're telling, as it kind of did a little bit in Boom, because Boom kind of played off of her being able to live because of the snow thing a little bit as well. And also, it kind of got in there with, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the Beatles episode. I'm blanking on the name of the episode. So the fact that it didn't play into this one at all, really, I appreciated very much. The other thing, too, with that is I also liked that the story didn't go look at the cruelty of the doctor, because what I thought was going to happen is we built up this big flirty relationship between the doctor and Rogue, and when the doctor says, like, how long do they live? 600 years. Oh, good, that's a long time to suffer. And you get this, it reminded me of this hint of David Tennant's 10th Doctor way back, where there would be these moments of, like, not even the Time Lord victorious, but, like, I'm blanking on that 2-parter episode with Martha, one of my favorites of that series, but I'm blanking on the name of the episodes. But the one where he locked his mind away and became John Smith, and then at the end when he became the Doctor again, he had this, like, big moment of, like, I am going to be cruel, a little bit cruel towards these people for what they did. The villains of that. And there was this element of, like, sometimes the Doctor can be terrifyingly cruel when he is slighted or harmed in some way through the people that he cares about. And I think that's an interesting characterization, but it was one that felt unique to David Tennant's Doctor, really. Kind of comes up here and there with other Doctors, too, but it was a real big, strong hit with David Tennant's Doctor. And I worried that the aim here was going to be like, oh, we built up this flirty relationship with Jonathan Groff, and then now the Doctor's going to be really, really cruel unnecessarily, and it's going to sort of turn off Jonathan Groff's character and be like, ooh, man, maybe I'd actually, you're a dangerous Doctor, I don't want to be with you. And instead, what happened was a really beautiful scene where we see that Ruby's alive, and the Doctor can't send her away, not kill her necessarily, but send her to this other dimension, because he's her friend, and he can't sacrifice her, even though it is for the greater good of defending others. And I think that that's a much more interesting, unique take on the Doctor. I mean, I've seen the more cruel Doctor. I love David Tennant. David Tennant's my favorite Doctor. I love the man. So I like that characterization. I think it can be interesting, but I want to see something new, and I like that this Doctor is different in that regard. And Jonathan Groff saying, I understand, I know you couldn't, and then that's when they officially finally kiss, and then he trades places with Ruby and says, find me, which, great for me, because that means we get to see more Jonathan Groff sometime in the future. Very much here for that. So I like that setup going forward. And again, I just like it being a thing for the Doctor. The other thing I didn't mention, too, kind of jumping back a little bit, was the dance sequence between Jonathan and the Doctor. I don't know why I'm saying Jonathan over Rogue. Whatever. But the dance sequence between the two of them, spicy scene. Loved that. And I loved that it played into, like, oh, them being gay is a lot for this era in time. But wasn't overplayed. It wasn't like, oh, you gay queers, or what, like, didn't have anybody like go and do that. It was just like they intentionally stoked that scandal to be able to deal with the situation. So at least it was like acknowledging the homophobia of the era, but it didn't allow it to become traumatic. And actually was a way that they wielded agency, which is something I rarely see. I've rarely seen queer characters get to wield homophobia for their own benefit, to be able to help them in some way. That's something kind of unique that I've never seen before, and I appreciated it. Like, we are addressing homophobia in this era. It is coming up, but it is not going to be traumatic, and actually is a way that the characters have agency. Also, the fact that the Doctor is very clearly gay. Love that now. Like, we've gotten hints of it, like he's been flirty with other people in the past of episodes, but nope, very clear. He is gay. He likes the dudes. I've said this before, but I am just so here for Russell T Davies' energy this season of just fuck the homophobes, fuck the racists, fuck them all. I'm going to tell stories that are meaningful, and not do it to spite them, but not try to acquiesce to them. I am so here for finally a writer on a big science fiction show not trying to skirt around the issues and try to not address these things head on because it won't be mass market consumable. I think that is often a cowardly line taken by usually big corporations about why we can't have queer characters in Star Wars, or have an episode of a TV show about a queer storyline, or a storyline overtly about race, like saying racism head on. Science fiction is very helpful in the sense that it can remove us from our context and give us a new way of thinking about something, but the fact that it needs, I think, at times to be like, this is what this is about. Yes, we're moving from the context so you can see the ways this works, but this is what that's about. I think Dot and Bubble did that really, really well. I think that was sort of the epitome of that this season for me, that it's like, this is about white supremacy and racism. It's in a new context. So it's not going to be like, we're not targeting America, we're not targeting the UK necessarily, but it is about that, very clearly so. And this season has been doing that a lot, and here again, we see that again with, like, no, the Doctor's going to be gay, and deal with it. Like, we're not here to spite you about that. We're like, they're living on their own terms, but we're also not going to be tiptoeing around that fact. And so I did really enjoy that. The only other thing to say about this is interesting seeing the the image of Susan Twist as the mother in the portrait there. That was interesting. Also too, I forget her name, but the lead owl lady. She is one of the lead actresses that was in, or not lead actresses, guest actresses from Torchwood. Way back in the day, like the very first season of Torchwood. So technically she's been in the Doctor Who universe before, so I was just like, oh, it's fun to see her. And also she's a sand snake on Game of Thrones, so as I say, I always like her. She always does a great job. She's clearly having a lot of fun with this episode too, so enjoyed seeing her. And then, like I said, the last thing that I do wish to address is the final scene between Ruby and the Doctor. Again, I think it would hit a little bit harder if we got to see their friendship grow a little bit more over the season. But I really did think that it was a really beautiful moment where the Doctor sort of was like, all right, let's go have fun. Let's have a good time. And he puts on that mask of like, everything's okay. Nothing hit me. I'm okay. I'm just still the fun-loving guy. And this adventure didn't hit me emotionally. And Ruby recognized, like, no, you need a hug. And just giving that to him, and I even love Ncuti's performance of it, where it wasn't like oh, okay, she's hugging me, I'm gonna accept it. He hugged her, and then it took him a minute to like feel it, because I've had those hugs before where like I've been upset, and then someone's come up and hugged me when I needed it, and I was still stuck in my mind being upset, and then I just felt the hug, and it took me a minute to like really feel it. And then I've broken down crying or things like that, in moments like that. So I think Ncuti's performance of it really felt accurate. Just the time it took for him to move into that hug, and then him putting on the ring at the end, I thought was really nice. And again, a good promise to hopefully we'll get Jonathan Groff back in future episodes. I went on way longer than I thought about this. I honestly didn't think I was going to have that much to say. I thought it was a fun, frivolous episode, but there's a lot to talk about. This is a really, 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 really good episode. It was what I needed this season. I think mainly my problems, if you can really consider them problems with it, are mainly to do with the shortness of the season, which is probably a lot of my problem with this season is going to end up being that it's too short, which, I don't really necessarily blame the writers or any of the creatives on that. That's a BBC/Disney Plus problem. So anyways, I loved this episode. Rogue, what did you think about it? I'm very excited for next week's first of the 2-part finale, and let me know what you thought down in the comments below. Until then, live long and prosper.